everyone, welcome to our YouTube channel. I'm Dr. Ashwati. Students, in this lecture, I'm going to discuss about socialism. In the last two lectures, I have already discussed about the rise of liberalism from its classical version to that of the modern liberalism. That means I have covered 2 centuries. In those 2 centuries, we have seen that how industrialization, it emerged from the, we can say that from the debris of feudalism, which in itself was an exploitative one, but at the same time it signaled the shift from like what we say that from feudalism to capitalism. There was a shift which was witnessed, like from the rural background or the rural economy to that of an urban economy. We have seen different phases of capitalism. In the beginning, it was considered to be a kind of a good way to create, or we can say to recreate a good life for the people, as it enveloped the idea of atomistic individual. It spoke about the the negative liberty in the first stage, then positive liberty. The negative liberty that enshrined the feature of no obstacles in your personal life, or like if you want to do or you want to pursue any career, the state should not intervene in your economic affairs. But with time, there was a new shift happened, and that is called the positive liberty. It means that the state can make intervention at certain places on certain acts that we have seen in the J.S. Mill's idea of self-regarding action and other regarding action. But socialism as an idea or an ideology, this is a product which came in reaction to capitalism, and in Karl Marx's idea that how the history he has described, that first stage was the primitive communism, followed by the slave owning society, then followed by the feudal society, then capitalism. And when the dictatorship of the proletariat happened, or when the working class made a revolution, then it destroyed, or we can say that dismembered the capitalism, and it led to socialism. In between, it was a transition phase before the communism. So here you can see that Karl Marx in his ideology also has spoken about socialism as a transitory one, where there will be everything, the mode of production, everything will be controlled by the state itself. But is it that only the explanation of socialism? There are various other aspects that we need to understand, and in this lecture I'll be explaining them. So let's start. Origin. As you know that I always emphasize on the fact that if you want to know any ideology, start reading about its origin story, the events that actually led to its growth. And when you're dealing with any political thinker, the first and foremost idea is to understand their life sketch. And I have emphasized it in various classes also, that if you know the thinker, their personal life, then it becomes more easier to understand their political ideologies as well. So let's understand the origin. The modern socialism, or the socialism of this time, or we can say that of the modern period, it emerged in the 19th century Europe. Again, this ideology also has its origins in Europe, and it was a reaction to socio-economic changes of the period. It means that again and again we are going to refer it to that of the transition from feudalism to that of capitalism, as Europe's biggest change that we saw during that 17th, 18th and 19th centuries was the shift that was happening. It means that, as you know, that capitalism has went through 3 phases: the mercantile capitalism, followed by the industrial capitalism, then the financial capitalism. So here we are dealing more with that of the transition that happened from mercantile capitalism to that of the industrial capitalism, where during the mercantile capitalism, at certain level the protectionism was there, then there were limitations on imports, and it was like a closed economy system was there. But under the industrial capitalism, it emerged as a kind of a national barriers were reducing also. So automatically now the world market, like let's say that the Europe was becoming a manufacturing hub for the world. And for that purpose itself, during that period, we have started seeing the impact of colonialism elsewhere. And this is what once a very famous British Prime Minister, Winston Churchill, he said that sun never sets in British Empire. The reason was that when you look at the map, when we look at their colonial possessions, across Caribbean to that of the East Asia, they had their own control, including Africa and all the continents. So this was also the period of mercantile expansion, colonialism was happening, and at the same time, the world was witnessing rapid industrialization as well. So rapid urbanization and industrialization was there. And the socialists, or we can say that the early socialists, who were actually highly tensed by the exploitative nature of the capitalism, they were actually reacting to the capitalism to the way that how the people who were like losing job at a very high pace, then after the hire and fire was very high, then after the very difficult working conditions, then after people were paid very low wages and the taxes were high. So people had different types of problem in itself. As you know that in the French Revolution also we have seen that the third estate used to pay the taxes, not the first and the second estate. And the socialism also questioned the atomistic individualism, the idea propounded under liberalism. It means that it is like when we talk about individuals only, when I am talking only about one individual, two individual or three individual, but we are not taking into consideration of the collectivity, then it is going to create a self-interested world. This is what socialism tried to address. Now, it propounded the ideas of cooperation, community and collectivism. It means that it spoke in terms of rather than competition, we have to herald a kind of a period where we have to promote cooperation. We have to have a community thinking. Whatever you do, it is not what I and there is a kind of an idea, us and them, or something like I and you. Not like that. It should have a community feeling. Then after collectivism, which is also an extension of the community feeling. Moving to our next. So socialism in its first phase, we can say that it emerged as Utopianism. So Utopianism, when we talk about Utopianism, it is like a wishful thinking, right? So here, Utopianism found its emergence in United Kingdom. Now in United Kingdom, which was also ahead of industrial development during that period, two major thinkers actually are associated with that of the idea of socialism. So one person who is from France, his name is Charles Fourier, and Robert Owen, he is from UK. He was from UK. And they worked on developing experimental communities. In current times, if you are watching the news also, you must have heard about kibbutz. Kibbutz. This is also a form of an experimental community which is collectivism. It is a form of collectivism which exists in Israel. And here they promoted the ideas of cooperation. It means like they are living in a commune system where there is an idea of cooperation, there is an idea of collectivity. Like it is not, each and every person is not thinking about themselves, but they, whenever they do any act, they actually take into consideration that if my act, whatever my act is, and what it what will be the repercussions of it, actually what I do, whatever my act is, how it is going to impact on others. So this is what we call it as the collectivism. So they address the plight of first generation urban dwellers. So when I mention about the first generation of urban dwellers, it means that those people who made a transition from that of feudalism, okay, they left the rural centers and they went to the nearby towns which were emerging as the centers of capitalism, or we can call it as like the capitalist production hubs. So Utopianism identified with the ideas of collectivism, experimental communities, which was a kind of in itself, it was an experiment to get rid of that what do you call it as that the self-interested individuals to that of a sense of a community living where people are not exploited. They are actually producing things together and they are doing the benefit for the community itself. The next stage, or we can say that the other form of socialism, that was the Fabian Socialism. This is one of the most strongest socialism. Now here it is also known as the evolutionary socialism or parliamentary socialism. So when I talk about evolutionary socialism, it is like gradualism. It means that you are going to shun the path of violence. You are not talking about capturing the state power. You are not talking about doing any bloodshed. You are not talking about doing any revolution. Simply it means that the working class, they need to generate a consciousness. When they generate a consciousness, what will happen to them is that automatically they will become aware about their rights, and they actually are going to, through the parliamentary approach, let's say that when they will be getting the voting rights, they will definitely vote in favor of those candidates who are going to represent their demands or something like that. So here the Fabian Society was formed in 1884. They believed in gradualism and piecemeal improvements. It means that evolutionary, not revolutionary. This is no sudden change, but rather than that, they will take a piecemeal approach. They supported the democratic method against the Marxian way of capturing the state power. No, they did not adhere to such violent methods. They adhered to the ideas of what we call it as parliamentary approach. Criticize the violent revolutionary tactics. So major thinkers we have here: Beatrice Webb, Sidney Webb, George Bernard Shaw, H.G. Wells, etc. These are the major thinkers associated with that of the Fabian Socialism. Next we have Gil Socialism. Gil Socialism is a product of the World War I, and it was during this time the trade union workers, basically the working class population, they wanted the control over the industries, and this was actually very short-lived one. This emerged during the World War I, and within a 20 years or so, its what we call it as its progress was on decline, and it influenced the trade union movement, and there are many thinkers associated with it. Especially these two names are very important ones: R.S. Tawney and G.D.H. Cole. And please note down the books of G.D.H. Cole: Self-Government in Industry, published in 1917, and Gil Socialism Restated, published in 1920. These two books are very much what we call it as, they are very important ones with reference to Gil Socialism. It was a short-lived experiment, but it left a very deep impact, and it actually influenced the trade union movement, or we can say that it actually emphasized, or we can say that it had a very great impact upon the future labor movements as well. The last one, this is called the Syndicalism. Syndicalism origins can be traced back to France. Again, you can see that whenever you see at socialism, these actually had an impact upon these Western European countries, and you must have noticed one point, that wherever you find socialism, they are all the countries associated with that of industrialization during the 20th as well as the 19th centuries. So it received audience among the working classes of Spain, Italy, Latin America. It spread to Latin America at a later stage. It is also known by the other name, which is called the anarcho-syndicalism. And it was influenced by the teachings of Pierre-Joseph Proudhon and Auguste Blanqui, and general strike was the major instrument. And it means that for them, the biggest tool that they instrumentalized to raise their voice and raise their awareness, and they raising the awareness about the plight of the working class, was through the calling for the general strikes. Obviously, some of these general strikes turned out to be violent, but in general sense, it remained a kind of a peaceful approach. So what did we learn from socialism? When we compare socialism with that of communism, communism always took the path of revolution through bloodshed, capturing the state power violently. But on the other hand, socialism always went with the peaceful method. It went with the democratic approach. So students, that's all in this class. See you in another lecture. Bye.